Okay, the next step is we've got to evaluate the bushing holes. These little holes here. Every one of these holes have to be evaluated with its mating axle. Okay, so you see these. I'm gonna have to polish each axle. This is the polish point here. Just give you an example. This is the center wheel for time. Okay, so center wheel would imply it goes in the center. So that hole right there is the hole that we've got to evaluate. Now, I'm doing it from the wrong side, but I'm just giving you the idea. And then for this one, the center hole, this drops in, and then you see the motion that you get. I've got to evaluate that and determine whether or not that hole and that shaft have the correct clearance to function for a long period of time. If it doesn't, then I rebush that hole to fit that axle size. Okay. Okay, next steps. This is an interesting little tool. I think it's called a J-cotting tool, and it's designed to be held into a vise, as you can see here with this brass section, and then it's got these pins. You notice these two have points, and on the opposite end it's got these little receptacles, and those receptacles are very handy for putting, you see, placing the shaft in. Different size shafts, and it allows you to put those shafts between centers, and the centers are adjustable, as you see here. And I think this is a watchmaker's tool, quite frankly. I found it on eBay for a really good price. It may not even work for what I'm looking to do, but I just found it interesting. It was really cheap. I'm going to try to use this. We may not be able to. I got to get the camera aligned to do work with it, but it'll all start with it mounted in the vise like that. Once I get it adjusted, we'll be back. Okay, so if you loosen, that's not it. If you loosen this one, okay, that allows this pin to slide back and forth. I'm going to take it out and I'm going to turn it around, and now I've got a bearing surface. I can do the same thing to this other side, and it looks like I might need to get that in the camera view. So now I've got two bearing surfaces in place. Now I'm going to take the axle with the gear and put that in between. Now what you're going to see is the ability to turn, and it holds on to it while I can do some working. And if you look real close, in this area here, that's got dirt in it, and that's what I got to get rid of. And this little tool here that I have is from a model making community, and it's a sanding stick. So my goal here is to go in each one of these and clean these out, and it'll actually give a little light polishing to the mating surface to get rid of any kind of imperfections that may be there. And you can see the shiny places, and that's exactly where the gear ran on the other as it transferred power. So I'm just sort of using this very fine plastic tool to clean up the gear set. And that's what I'm going to do with all of these. I'm going to go through and take a look at these and make sure that there's not any major points of issue on them, because any place it sticks or it may be dirty, that dirt is an opportunity to stop the clock. And it's look just what little bit I'm doing here. Look at the crud that's just coming out, and you can't even see it. And you put something like this back together when it. A lot of people just take a clock like this and say, "Hey, I'm just going to oil it." Well, all you're doing is oiling this gunk. Look at the gunk that I've got on that. And so as you clean these, it just gets to the point where I'll take a brush to it in a bit and we'll make sure. But you can see right there, that's a wear point. That's a wear point. So where the mating surface of this gear, this is the number 1 gear on the chime train. So I would need to look at which one actually makes contact with it, and I think that's the number 2 gear. And let me see here, makes sense, 1, 2. I believe this one actually rides in this. Yeah, it sure does. See, it rides in that manner. Okay. Put this back. I'm not ready for that. But this tool allows you to get in, look, manipulate, not damage, clean where necessary. And in a moment, I'm gonna get, and we might as well go do it. This has an ability to, if you see where the bearing surface is on this for the plate, it's actually right here. This is the bearing surface as best I can tell. And I've made this sanding stick. It's got 500 grit and 1000 grit paper on it. And you can really just lay this, on that and turn it. And the paper is so fine, that it won't damage, it'll just polish anything that's on that. We'll just bring it to a nice polish, and if that doesn't work, we'll go to another tool. But that's the 500. Now I'm going to go to the 1000. Just wipe that off. And okay, so at this point, let's get a brush and we'll do a slight brushing on it and clean this. And this is the J-cotting tool, J-A-C-O-T, and you can find them. They're going to be expensive on eBay. This one I found for a steal, and you see it probably works with a lathe. This little table right here, it's adjustable, and it's supposed to be, I'm turning the wrong knob, but you see it's adjustable, and it's really a lathe, the equivalent of a lathe table. Because if you're able to turn this with a dog of some kind, you can actually do work with this just like a lathe. So, nice little tool. And you see how easy it makes it for me to be able to hold and work and manipulate these. Okay, this tool in particular, I mean this axle, I don't have to do anything here because there's a square surface on it, but I've got to clean this surface. I've cleaned this one, I've cleaned these teeth, and I've cleaned these teeth. So now it's just a matter of working this to where I can clean that axle. Be back. Okay, this is the number 2 wheel for the chime train. And you can see the individual pins here, and as I spin that around, they were pointing all different directions. They were pointing this way, they were pointing this way, and you can see now it's pretty much squared away. I've also gone through, and you see how dirty that is. Each one of those pins had plenty of filth on it, so I just basically took this pointed edge and run it across the contact area all the way around, you know, the top 180 degrees on the contact, and basically cleaned off all of the, you know, many years of crud that's been built up on it. I also come here and cleaned out each of these gear teeth, Again, it's important to have that. And then I've got to clean this pinion point, this pinion and this pinion point. And then, as you see, one of the things I'm also looking at is that spins, is it true on its axis, and that one's a good true one. So I'll be back. Okay, we continue to get smaller with these wheels. I'm still on the chime side, and this is the number 3 wheel. So the reference that we'd be looking at here is, this would be the back plate of the clock, the front plate of the clock. Interesting thing about this little pin right here, this pin stops the chiming. So it'll come around. There's a thing that this will bump against, just like that, and that actually stops the chiming. So this is the stop wheel, and I'm just doing more of the same on this. Okay, now I'm on the number 4 wheel now, and this wheel actually, so this is on the front side, the front plate, and this is where the hands are. Okay, so as the hand turns on the clock, it gets to the point where it's either at 6 or 12, and then it sends the signal to this little pin right here by moving a bar out of the way, and then this starts spinning. So this is the start wheel. The number 4 start wheel is on the chime side, and this will just spin until the stop wheel, which I showed you in the previous one, because of the snail interaction, has a pin stop it. So I'm going to clean this up. Okay, I've proceeded down the rinse and rework line. I've completed number 5, which is I guess a regulator for the chime side. I've started on the time side, and I've cleaned those and polished those pivots. This is the center wheel on the time side. I've also cleaned it. It's been surprising how much gunk, when you look at it in detail, comes off of all these things. Same way with the number 3 wheel, and I'm now to the escape wheel. The escape wheel is it's a special wheel. This is what the pallet rides on, and this is what gives you the incremental tick tock. So I'm going to pay specific attention to these individual tips and just make sure all of this is clean. And at that point I'll have one more, which is the pallet. Okay, so this is the pallet, and the pallet basically has these pieces on it. We'll get to that next, and then we'll have all of the wheels cleaned for the project. I'll be back. Okay, I've made it to the pivot. And if you can see this, what I'm working on are the pallet portions that ride on the escapement. And if you look, I put some marker on this, and then I cleaned it with, I run across it with a ruby stone, and it just took, the ruby stone just took off the high points, and you see that groove right there. There's a very fine groove that the that the brass has worn into this metal. It's probably not, I can't measure it. And the same thing happened over here, and this one I've already done some polishing to, but you can see the little dot right there. If you can if this is focusing, that little dot right there is all that remains of the same groove that was over. I've got to remove out of this, and then you see how highly polished the surface is. When this tooth drags across, when this tooth drags across, let me get it aligned correctly. What you don't want it to do is ride in the old groove, because when we put this back together, it does ride in the old groove. It may only be part of the old groove, just depending on how all this realigns. So we're really establishing a new surface for it to start wearing again. So I'm going to continue on. My next step is to, I'll polish this a bit more until it's nice and smooth, and then I'll remove these two bright spots until it comes, this low spot comes out, and then I'll polish it. And at that point, this should be ready. Okay, I'll be back. Okay, we have now completed all of the polishing of each one of the wheels and their shafts, the prospective shafts. I've also completed the repolishing of the pivot points. I have been very careful not to change an angle on the pivot. Okay, so I polished this surface. If you can see that, there's the surface that I polished, and then in this case, this is the surface. Let's see if we can get that to show. I really can't tell because I can't see it on the video, but that's the two surfaces I've polished, and they're mirrored. And I did that with a ruby stone. It's a very special stone. So that should give us good contact points when this goes back together and control, because see how that, if you can see just at my thumbs where that contact goes, that actually slides off as this goes tick tock tick tock. Now I didn't remove a very large amount of material to polish. It just literally turned a piece of dull metal into a piece of shiny metal, which is removing metal, but that should make it function better. Now the next step that we're going to go to, cleaning wise, are these plate holes. So when we come back, I'll show you the process that I've decided to use in order to get down into those holes and clean the holes out, because these pivots need to have good clean holes. Okay, we'll be back. Okay, so the goal is to clean, not enlarge. So these are skewers, and you notice they've got that nice sharp point on them. So my goal here is to basically use this along with some acetone. I had acetone here. Okay, we'll use some acetone here to clean these holes out. So put a drop of acetone in the ones I'm going to work with, and then just use the tip to try to clean it out good. Right? Each one has a different depth, but we're gonna work it. And you see the stuff coming out of it. You don't want that to be part of the clock. Okay. This is where the acetone helps. It'll break crud. So in this case, it's really just rinse and repeat both sides, and make sure you don't break the tip off in one of these. And I'll be back.